Alright, I guess you could consider this an introductory video. I am Beefcakes13, and I will first off be showing you a rule system that I worked on. This isn't my main Google account, but I shared this with myself. It's a tabletop game called Sci-fan. Now, that's essentially sci-fi and fantasy put together, which is exactly what the game contains. It has many different lists for many different types of armies. There's copperheads, and then of course there's the special rules for each army, which I will get into later. But there's copperheads, cyborgs, dark elves, Faerun, which are essentially space elves, pretty much, hill dwarves, hobgoblins, which are really fun and obnoxious. There's Chaos Eternal, Knights of the Phoenix. There are Lizard Men, Miles Dei, which are essentially sort of a holy order type army. Prophets of the Grim, Rat Men. Then, of course, I have the Sci-fan core rules, which I'll get into here. There's Sea Elves, Sectors, which are essentially your vanilla guys for sci-fi. Space Orcs, Stunties, those are essentially your space dwarves. The Frayed, I gotta check these out because I can't remember. Let's see. Okay, so essentially, the Frayed, they are they're sort of a sci-fi type undead list. So the Plague, which is essentially just zombie type creatures and so forth, but they're built tougher essentially. They're nasty things. Walkers of the Crypt, which is just plain fantasy undead with a few bits of flavor added in here and there. Wolfkin, which is essentially an army of werewolf types. Wood Elves of Heart Forest, which I actually really enjoy playing as, but they're kind of crazy to play as. Anyways, we'll get into the core rules here. And in Sci-fan, you will need, and it can work for any scale. If you aren't familiar with miniatures, essentially check out Games Workshop, Mantic Games, Privateer Press, etc., etc. So, essentially, Sci-fan is the fantasy game of guns and swords, and you measure it in inches. It's all measured in inches unless you convert it to a smaller scale, such as 6mm. And I have yet to try it out in any smaller scale than 28mm. I've only played a few games of it to kind of test it out. I haven't gotten much feedback on it, unfortunately, from anyone else, but the feedback that I've gotten from the people I play against, it's kind of helped develop certain things. So the surface can be any type of table, any flat surface really will work. You'll need 6-sided dice, and you want to have space in between the two armies when you set up. You don't just want the two armies to be right in front of each other. essentially you set up the figures, roll to see who goes first, and then whoever finishes setting up their figures first actually gets a +1 to that roll. So you set up and then you roll to see who goes first. And you follow the turn order until the agreed victory conditions have been met by one player, and that depends on the scenario and so forth. And if you have 3 or more players, essentially the person who rolls the highest, they go first, and then it goes clockwise from there. Alright, and that will be the end of this video. I will continue on with the different characteristics and so forth of the game in the next video. Goodbye.